For every city you burn, I'm gonna build one high.
Greetings, fellow Pyrians. I am Astrothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is August 18th, YC127, and this is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, guys. How's it going? I know that the MER is different, but watching the Oz show go over Pearl Abyss numbers, things are not looking great for them. CCP is fine. They might just need a chip in the middle of a much larger pot. I haven't actually watched the Oz shows recently. I probably should. It has been pretty universally true that, like, for the last year or more, like, Pearl Abyss has struggled, but EVE Online seems to be relatively good for them, which is one of the reasons why all of those rumors about them selling CCP was so confusing to me, because it kind of goes against my understanding of the situation. But I don't know enough to dig too deep into that. I would hesitate. But I do want to say on the onset rather, that, you know, just in case, because I have had people talk to me recently about how they're not receiving notifications about me going live or whatever. If that is you, if you're watching this recorded and would have liked to watch it live, I do strongly recommend you come onto the Convocation of Empyreans Discord and sign up for YouTube in the Roles channel. That will make it so that you get pinged when I go live or when there's other YouTube content. You can also, like, if you have your own Discord, that is a broadcast channel, so you can subscribe to that channel, the media channel, so that way when I go live or when other content creators that post there go live, you can be there. You know, obviously, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing to the channel is another really good way of getting that information. But just in case, because like I said, I've had people complaining about not getting notifications on time. I do post usually about an hour ahead of my show, and as the show is going live in my media channel in the Discord, that is still the best place to look. Noisy Gamer, how's it going, guys? How's it going? Noisy Gamer being one of the main dudes that pay attention to the financials of EVE Online. But on the PA earnings call, PA said that EVE Online has its best quarter since 2016. The reason Pearl Abyss would sell CCP is that Black Desert is doing so bad and Crimson Desert still isn't released that they might need the money. Interesting. Okay, yeah, so that could be the case. Now, it's very interesting because, like, so Black Desert Online is obviously a much more traditional, like, WoW style MMO, but, like, when Pearl Abyss bought CCP, a big piece of it was that, like, EVE Online was doing successfully a lot of what they wanted to do with Black Desert, but that Black Desert was like a bigger game, right? So, and this has been kind of the pro and con of EVE Online being purchased by Pearl Abyss, is the fact that, like, EVE Online has this secret lightning in a bottle that has made this hardcore open world sandbox PvP game exist in a universe in which that kind of game generally doesn't do that well, you know? In fact, Josh Rife Hayes has made several videos about how like full scale PvP games end up being not as popular, like they kind of die out, and it is true that they struggle. But EVE Online has managed to, like, become something different. Even CCP Siegel back in the day talked about the fact that you couldn't make EVE Online 2 because, like, EVE Online is already established, and it's that establishment that is so important, right? In a lot of ways, we as modern EVE Online players of 2025 have to thank the 20+ years of game development, but also just social development of the game. This community who has managed to solidify and, you know, become a long-term project instead of like a 3 to 5 year project like it was originally envisioned. So Black Desert really kind of wanted a little bit of the alchemy that EVE Online had done. But at the same time, EVE Online had always struggled with marketing, communication, and, to be honest, finances, right? Before the acquisition of Pearl Abyss, there was always these kind of pressures about them not quite having enough money because they were trying to expand things and whatnot. And so they'd have like occasional like dramatic layoffs or, you know, whatever. And like this idea that they had these loans that they're constantly kind of fighting behind, especially after the failure of Incarna. Black Desert's or Pearl Abyss's purchase really opened up the doors for them to be more comfortable in their development, which led to more long-term thinking, which led to things like scarcity and, you know, the overall reconstruction of the design of the game, which leads us to kind of where we're at right now, which is, you know, kind of the late stage of the regrowth phase, which is kind of nice. But it is true that historically, Black Desert has struggled more than EVE Online. But again, that's what I've been saying, is that EVE Online is this strangely stable situation in a game space that is generally known for being unstable, right? The fact that EVE Online is a 24 or 21-year-old game and is as strong as it is and looks as good as it is and has a community as active as they are is actually a pretty dramatic anomaly in the MMO world, especially for an open world sandbox game and not like a theme park game. But yes, I mean, like that's the point that I'm trying to say, is that Black Desert is a higher scale. Like it's a bigger game. It's more popular. They've managed to popularize it more, but it isn't as functional of a game as EVE Online is. That's the big difference. And so again, like as EVE Online has been going through these transitions, especially as they've increased their revenue streams through things like the introduction of like Skinner as a new mechanism to get rid of Plex. You know, that definitely like helps with that stabilization. It goes back to like even during scarcity, when you saw a contraction of the number of active accounts, because like a lot of the contraction that we saw during scarcity wasn't from players outright quitting the game. A lot of that contraction came from players stopping their multi-boxing, right? Especially after skill injectors were introduced and the reign of the Rorqual started. The popularity of having massive skill, you know, numbers of an accounts was, you know, increasingly popular. It used to be that like the normal player would have maybe 1 to 3 accounts, right? Like I like to say that most players should have 2 accounts if they're a serious player, not past a certain scale. I'm not saying that you can't be solo, but generally speaking, especially if you want to get beyond capital ships, you pretty much need to have 2 accounts, because you need to be able to, you need to at least be able to light your own Cyno, right? So at a certain point in the game, on a certain level of sophistication, having at least 2 accounts makes a lot of sense for most people. However, especially when skill farming became popular, we see this explosion of accounts. And, you know, especially with things like nullsec expanding and Imperium being a big deal, we see people going from, you know, like most players having 1 to 3 accounts, with maybe the most crazy multi-boxers having 8 or 9, to becoming more and more common for somebody to have somewhere between 10 to 30 accounts, with skill farms being upwards of 100+ accounts. Because now, instead of having to figure out how to pay for each of those accounts individually, you like with skill farms, that made them be able to pay for themselves and even make a profit per account just by selling the skill points. So now people have these 100 accounts to they have these, you know, these multiple accounts, as many accounts as they can manage to tolerate to maintain. And so that's why we see this like major shift from teamwork, or more importantly, how can I, what's fun is that a lot of activities, when they looked at activities, they're like, how can I solo this activity? But then past 2016, 2017, we definitely see this transition to like, okay, now, you know, as CCP was trying to focus more and more on group content and defeating the idea of the solo content. When player bases see the group content, they think multi-boxed content. In fact, this is so bad that just this weekend I was fighting with Malak. We were out in faction warfare space, and this guy could not accept the idea that Malak was not my alt. The idea that I might have a friend instead of just my own alt account was so alien to him that he refused to accept it at all. I even linked him to my channel, which obviously I doubt he would even watch it, but like that's the absolute state of things at the moment. And a large piece of that is because of that transition. But at any rate, my point is that during scarcity in particular, or more importantly, I would argue that during the times of trouble, the chaos era before scarcity, when they made things like nullsec particularly dangerous with drifter attacks, and then later right after that blackout, we see this major contraction of the number of accounts each individual has, right? So we did see a reduction in the player base, but a lot of that reduction, and CCP has said this a couple of times, that we see people getting rid of their massive, like tons of accounts. And instead, a lot of those people were replaced by new players. And I would argue that like, that is, I feel the truth. There was during that period of time, a pretty significant change of guard where, I mean, it is true, like a lot of the older school players did in fact quit the game. You know, that's why a lot of the time when you go and check out like EVE Media now, like other podcasters or other discussion, you know, people that discuss EVE Online, especially people that come from the older world, like Open Comms, a lot of these people don't play the game anymore. And a lot of these guys talk about like things that are true or were true like 10 years ago, right? Meanwhile, we have seen a huge change in the overall zeitgeist as like newer players are experiencing the newer tutorials, newer agency stuff. Agency was, I think, like the very big, like the first big sign to me that there was a shift happening, right? Because like prior to that, the common wisdom was that CCP can't teach the game because this is a game that is supposed to be taught from players to players, right? But then, especially as the agency came out, what I found was really interesting was that the new players embraced the agency because they were presented it when they first got into the game, whereas older players did not adapt to the agency. And so they wouldn't teach people about it. They wouldn't recommend it. And often these newer players were having to teach the older players about the functionality within the agency. A big piece of it was I didn't like the agency until I could use it to get daily rewards. I think you're talking about opportunities, Nosy. So like a good example of this is like a year and a half or whatever after the agency was introduced, like the newest version, I rejoined Faction Warfare, and nobody had even realized that you can use the agency to find out where all of the plexes are in any system in the war zone. Like that was a functionality that had been in the game for over a year, but a lot of the people that were in Faction Warfare had just never adapted to that capability. So anyway, what happens is we have these newer players that are getting into the game and they're getting excited about the game at the same time as things like scarcity and the changes that came with that were like becoming an increasing frustration to older players in the game with more established means of things, right? And I think that the biggest, like the agency was the first clue that I had, but the biggest change, I think, was the industry changes, right? This is when they shifted the balance of industry so that way all of the same kind of frigates and cruisers and everything all cost the same amount of materials, but they also introduced all of the new reactables for R4 reactables. They changed the way that capitals are do, so they introduced all the new doodads, including the exploration doodads and the gas doodads and, you know, all that stuff that's now required. They made Navy and pirate faction ships more complicated to build. Some of that has been reined back in. They made battleships more complicated to build with the core temperature regulators, et cetera, et cetera. Like that industry program was a huge change because the experienced players were incredibly hostile to it, right? Because it was a whole bunch of extra stuff, and they even tried to be like, this is going to be bad for new players. Meanwhile, the new players who grew up in that environment didn't see it as a big problem because that was just the world that they knew. And so that was really when we start to see the okay boomer meme, where it's like the older players were trying to explain to the newer players why what CCP was doing was bad, and the newer players were basically seeing the older players as bitter vets that are just mad and butthurt and probably should just leave the game, right? And that they are legitimately trying to enjoy the game. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened. I mean, this kind of happens anytime you have a big influx of players into the game. A really good earlier example of this was after the Battle of Asakai. We have the founder of Brave Newbies come into the game, and he comes into a game, and he is surrounded by bitter vets at the time. And so he creates the Brave Newbies, which is this idea of fun per hour instead of ISK per hour. You know, so but I think that that functional change of like the new players rejecting the information, the knowledge, and the teachings of the older players really came during scarcity after, 2021, 2022, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, but at any rate, the point is that one of the things that came out of this was that we see, wait, what? Whose colorful suits? Are you talking about Dirk? Because Dirk didn't found, yeah, sorry, Dunk. Dunk didn't, I'm not talking about, Dunk did not create Brave Newbies. I can't remember who it was that was the main guy that did it. Dunk took over Brave Newbies when that guy left. But Dunk is also great. I did actually see him on, I saw a Dunk Approves Reddit post like a week ago. I don't remember exactly what it was. But yeah. No, Dunk was great for sure. But any rate, the point is that CCP said that what we lost in multi-boxers was often regained in real players. And then on top of that, the finances showed that while the number of subscriptions were going down, the total revenue and the amount of revenue per person was actually going up. And part of that, like a lot of that has to do with like increased quality of skins, additional services with Plex, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, they raised the price to $20, and that was very controversial, but it actually hasn't significantly reduced the number of paid players. So that's just a bonus for them. And so, like I said, for a while now, EVE has been the lower number absolute when it comes to revenue for Pearl Abyss compared to Black Desert Online. But it's been the most stable or increasing source of revenue for Pearl Abyss in comparison to Black Desert Online, which has actually kind of started to wane because it is kind of just a WoW clone with some extra steps, and so has not like transitioned into the modern world in the same sort of way as MMOs in general have started to wane. But really, EVE is $11 per month because you always buy it when it's on sale. I mean, some people do. Some people do. But I always hesitate with I always hesitate with things like always and never. BDO's marketing strategy is Coomer skins. I mean, waifus on sides of ships when. Eve Echoes has so much better skins than... No, I'm just kidding. Oh, shoot. Hold on. I do have a phone call real quick. I need to take this. Huzzah. All right, I'm back. Yeah, the FOMO article is really weird. We did talk about that last time. Do I have... I don't know, man. I kind of want to talk to CCP about it. I kind of want to see where it's going. I don't know. I don't know, man. It is weird. One of the things that we did learn over the weekend is that these bonus items are actually not for... Like, if you go into the store... I sound distant. Hold on. I unmuted the wrong mic. I unmuted my webcam mic. Thank you. So, one of the weird things that we figured out during over the weekend, if you come here, like the 1 month Omega comes with bonus items, right? It has all those bonus items that they talked about, but it is also true that like the other versions of Omega with discounts on it, like you can get 45% off 24 months of Omega, which is a crazy amount of Omega to buy at one time. But you know, whatever. But like if you wanted to buy 6 months of Omega, it doesn't come with any extra stuff. So it's weird. It's very weird. Obviously, they're still in the middle of experimenting with stuff. I unfortunately can only give so much feedback because I don't pay for Omega. My account is currently, let me check. My account is subbed to January 31st, 2038. Thanks to you guys using my link, which you can use down below. That doesn't just go to me, that goes to everybody that helps make the convocation work. So if you haven't gotten your free million skill points, make sure to use that link. It came with extra stuff for two. No, there was two different things that was happening. So there was this pack where more than 1 month of Omega for cost came with Plex. That's the one that lasted for 2 weeks and is gone now. But this one where buying 1 month of Omega on the NES, so for Plex, so 500 Plex, gets you 1 month of Omega plus these items, and that's still true right now. And I think that's what they said is permanent. Permanent. It's permanent until they say it's not. How about that? Oh, shoot. Gosh darn it. Hold on. Just give us a sale calendar. So that might be an interesting thing to match up. So by the way, guys, the next sale, since we're talking about this, let's go with Union Day. Let's search for Union Day. Can we find Union Day? Display your loyalty and save big. So we are about a week and a half to 2 weeks away from Caldari Union Day. You know, so they've been doing these, like they did the Amar one. It just ended a couple weeks ago. You know, so, you know, these are, every empire has like their founding day or whatever. And they used to do like bigger events for it, you know, like Liberation Day. But the next one that should come up is at the end of August. It may not necessarily start on the 30th because I can't remember exactly when Caldari Union Day is, like the day it is. But we can see that last year it was from the 30th to the 6th. So that makes sense. It's 1 week. So I expect the next quote unquote sale to happen then, which if we go back and we actually look at the sales, because we kind of missed this one because I wasn't streaming then. There's been at least one sale running for the last 5 weeks. Yeah, so this one is very similar to the ones that we have been seeing as far as these holidays go, where they try to put like Skinner components in with the items. We have had some concern with the packs being like not as valuable as they were in previous, like at the towards the, like it seems that this year they have reduced the overall, or they've changed the overall like scale of things. It used to be very simple, right? Like if they have a deal, then the money of the deal easily can justify the amount of game time or plex or whatever that you get. And then on top of that, the Skinner components and other pieces like that were just like bonus stuff. But then this year, we've seen a change where several of these deals, you could just buy the plex in a pack or whatever for less, right? So without the value of the skin, the deal wasn't worth it, which made it a lot more difficult for me to recommend it, for those of you who've been watching my streams this year. This one was a lot closer to being kind of the old way. Like I said, we didn't cover it, and I don't have the information here right now, so that sucks about like how much this package actually was. But the point was is that this was a little bit better than the previous ones of this year. So there is a pretty decent chance that Caldari Union Day will have some cool valuable deals about it. But again, it's hard to tell. And with things like the value over FOMO, again, I don't know if I properly understand what even they're getting at with this post. I don't feel like this even addresses any of the issues when it comes to FOMO. So yeah, it's not great. Interesting alliance feeders at the same time as Caldari Navy Day, and Caldari is sponsoring the tournament this year. I mean, it makes sense to me. Pretty sure they skipped the ponytail sale in the nest this half. What the hell are you talking about, ponytail? I wouldn't even call this post vague. I would just call this a lot of words for not a lot. Oh, the 50% off Omega plus MCT. And we talked about this last time too. We are actually pretty close. They were saying that like the current sale for MCT and Omega is ending in 1 day. This deal is the most bizarre deal I have ever seen CCP present. I am very excited for Vanguard. I've had lots of fun with Vanguard in the past. Yeah. I'm glad to have it back. And I actually, like, I'm excited for this update for Vanguard, but Vanguard isn't really going to be, like, a full-fledged... It's only going to be a curiosity. Not much, Dutch. We're just bullshitting at the beginning of the show, mostly. This one is going to be cool, but, like, it's still just a curiosity. It's something to play with until next year. Because once it's become, like, a full-fledged thing, like, the fact that it's connected to the game is fine, but, like, because of the fact that it's only a couple of weeks every few months or whatever, they can only make that impact so meaningful. Next year, when they come out with the open early access thing and it becomes like a permanent component of the universe, that's the real time, right? That's when everything gets real. So right now it's a fun curiosity, but it's getting a lot better, and I'm very interested in the new weapon systems. We didn't really talk about that last time when it came to Vanguard, but this new upcoming Vanguard update is supposed to have all of the new weapons. So the charging pistol, the laser rifle, the shotgun. So those are going to be fun to play with. All right, let's jump into some real news. We're going to cover this real quick because there's not that much to say about this. But upscaling and ray trace shadows now live. Today was a fairly big update to EVE Online. Actually, there's been a couple of big updates to EVE Online in the last few days. In fact, I saw a post on, I think, Reddit, that, or maybe it was the forums, it was the forums that was complaining about the fact that they're posting updates without patch notes. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they are, in fact, significantly upgrading the graphics engine. And that requires a recompilation of all of their major files when it comes to the graphics engine, which, of course, you know, that graphics are one of the heaviest pieces of the game when it comes to like size, right? Like as far as just downloads or whatever. So that's why we've had some pretty big, beefy downloads for the last couple of days. But what we have now is upscaling and ray trace shadows. This was the thing that was tested on Singularity a few days ago. Clearly the test went well. I find it odd that this test went out and then this comes out so quickly when we've had so much, like we've had 2 tests so far when it comes to the fire systems, but that hasn't come out yet. I have a theory that, and this kind of continues to like reinforce my idea that we absolutely are not going to get the Legion major update this month. My biggest piece to that is that if we were going to get the major update this month, as in like in a week or two, a lot of the updates that we've gotten this month, I would not have expected us to have gotten this month, right? This is another good example of that. Like, if you were going to have a major update, these are the kind of things that would make sense. This, the Pyrite changes and some other stuff that has come out this month, those are the kind of things that you would want to fold into a major update to make sure that major update felt as big as possible. So the fact that these things are coming out outside of that cycle implies to me that they didn't want to wait like a month and a half to come out with this. So it's coming out now. So that still pegs the major update to coming next month. But either way, this one is a big deal for some people and no deal for other people. So let's look. CCP is thrilled to introduce 2 major graphical enhancements now live for EVE Online, delivering elevated visual fidelity and improved performance. Advanced upscaling, modern solution, enhanced performance. Upscaling is an innovative graphics technique that boosts the game performance by rendering it lower resolution and intelligently enhancing the image quality to match your display native resolution. This allows for smoother gameplay, higher frame rates, and significantly reduced graphic card load without sacrificing visual clarity. In mobile environments, upscaling also helps extend battery life, offering a great deal of great experience whenever you play. Previously, AMD FSR 1 offered a solid performance improvement, albeit with visual compromises. This update advances visual quality and performance even further with new state-of-the-art upscaling technology. So AMD FSR 1 was the system that we had. Vanguard is doing something on September 16th. They could have some EO event lined up with it. Yeah, we already, the last episode that we did, I think it was, we did... We watched the video with CCP Rutati and the guy who's working on Vanguard, and we watched that whole thing. So, okay, so when we hit escape before and you were able to do the upscaling and choose like which version of upscaling, that was FSR 1 from AMD. Now they're releasing AMD FSR 3, which is, I'm assuming, better. NVIDIA DLSS upscaling technology from NVIDIA features advanced frame generation for exceptional image quality and optimized performance for NVIDIA GPUs. Intel XESS, Intel's sophisticated upscaling technology, expanding compatibility and enhancing overall performance. And Metal FX for macOS, specialized support for Apple Silicon macOS users, ensuring all capsuleers enjoy breathtaking. Yeah, bigger number is better. So if we go into the game right now, we can hit this and we can go, okay, so this we have it set to AMD FSR 1. So we can turn this off. And hold on. We hit Control F, we can see our frame rate. And if we go Control Alt Shift M, we pull this up. So now we've got some stats to look at. Okay, so I have a 1070 Ti. Again, if somebody wants to upgrade that for my birthday, it's this Friday. No. So if I change this to AMD FSR 1, oh, also let's turn off VSync. Without VSync, it should be willing to go up. Actually, will the frame gen boost FPS during heavy tie-dye? Feel like rendering load during large battles on server side and frame gen can potentially use more GPU resources. So what it's not going to change tie-dye. It will change how much your computer chugs when loading a bunch of stuff on space, right? Like, so the game being slow, as in like things operating slowly, your modules responding slowly, etc. That's server side. But like when you turn your camera and it's like chunky, that's a client side issue. Does that help? So if I go here and I turn on upscaling, now my frame rate goes up to, well, it went up because tie-dye slows down physics frame and frame gen injects more rendering frame frame, right? So yeah, I'm not the most knowledgeable about that kind of stuff. Hold on. Do I not have any other options because my GPU sucks, or is it because I'm not on DirectX 12? Hold on, let me double check. Ah, it's because I'm not on DirectX 12. Hold on. Let's kill this. And run it again. Okay, unlike traditional shader-based methods such as FSR1, these advanced solutions utilize sophisticated algorithms that deliver significantly improved image quality while optimizing performance. Each upscaler offers multiple quality settings, allowing you to fine-tune your visual experience. So here's their video of it. So you can see no upscaling, 40 frames per second. DLSS is 74 frames per second. DLSS upscaling with frame generation is 100 frames per second. So what can we choose? Aha! Look at this. FSR3. Oh, now I've got 85 frames per second. And it does, like, it's probably going to be hard for you guys to see. Because, oh, hold on. Why is my game being all big again? Okay. So interestingly enough, okay, so when it's not in focus, we can see that it gets throttled back down to 52, and that's pretty normal. But when I click on the game, it does put it back into focus, and my frames per second goes up to 85, right? If we go turn this off, then my frames goes to 47. So yeah, you're definitely getting some pretty good stuff. But I do, like, I can still notice a little bit, just looking at it, that it is crisper. I don't know. I'd have to be pretty dang pedantic or like critical to try to suggest that this looks noticeably different than without it on. For good image quality, I'm just going down the list. So now we're going to go to Intel XESS. And this is still a performance improvement. I don't know if that's necessarily too much better or worse than the other one. Yeah, I have depth of field on. Hold on. Where is that? Depth of field. If I turn off depth of field, then that kind of So if I go ultra performance, what do I get now? So I can see a little bit of blurriness, especially as I'm moving the camera, which was kind of something I saw with one, but this is ultra performance and I'm getting 76 frames per second right now, which is pretty good. If I go back to AMD FSR, and then frame generation. Oh, that is very different. That is bad. That looks like, this looks like it's like a mobile game that I am that I'm playing on my computer. So, but if I turn this to ultra quality, what is the two numbers? Is it that I'm getting 45? So I'm getting 44 frames per second under normal conditions, and then 88 frames per second with frame generation. This looks I mean, this looks better than ultra performance. But yeah, no, definitely. So the reason why I think this is important is that, like, it's a little bit blurrier, and that little bit of blurrier is just enough to make it so I think it might give people headaches. I made it even to WoW. So if I go to XESS directly from there, I can see. This is probably what I'm going to use from now on. It gains me some frames per second, and it doesn't look like, I don't see a performance change at all. Let's go back down to ultra performance, see what that does. So this I can, especially when I'm turning it, I can see the loss of quality. So I wouldn't want to do it at that rate, because that, again, would likely give me headaches or whatever. We go to quality. That's better. I like ultra quality, though, even though that's not much of a change. I want quality, not ultra quality. I feel like it's a little bit softer, a little bit fuzzier under quality, but let's see, 64 frames per second versus 60. I mean, is 4 frames per second worth the slight loss of quality? I don't know. I might actually just try. I'm going to probably try it in ultra quality. Although, interesting that anti-aliasing is turned off. What is the FPS outside? Let's go find out. AAA is off because upscaling doesn't? Makes sense. That was kind of what I was thinking it probably would be, but thank you for the confirmation. Okay. So we're going to be loading everything at first. Oh, come on. Everything's feeling a little bit clunky, but I'm not sure why that is. But all right, so 35. Okay. And this is ultra quality. Let's go down to quality. Where are you going? You going up? You going up? It's trying to load a bunch of stuff. So yeah, with ultra, wait, why did it, wait. This says ultra quality still. Okay, whatever. So with quality, I have, I wouldn't say it bugged out, it just did an update. I'm having it. It goes up to about 70 and down to about 35, depending on what's going on. And then if I go to like ultra performance, what does it look like? Oh, yeah, that's so gross. I can't. I won't be able to do that. That looks... Again, it looks like a mobile game being played on my computer. And it doesn't even have that much FPS bonus. All right, let's see what FSR 3 does for me. So frame generation, slightly decrease image quality. Okay. So here, where's our frames per second going to go? Yeah, this definitely doesn't work as good for me either. Yeah, obviously your graphics cards and stuff like that is going to be different. I think that for me, I'm going to stick with Intel XESS. Maybe we should try balancing. I know I have frame gen on. What does balance do? What does it get me? Oh, this still has that kind of weird blurriness that I don't like about the upscaling, especially when I'm turning the camera. And my FPS goes from 40 to 50. I still think quality's probably going to be where I'm at. But you're just going to have to test it out for yourself. I think this is going to be it for me. What is my CPU? Does it not say? Hold on. Let me look up devices. I want to be able to give you an accurate modern answer. I have a 12th gen i5 12400. The other thing that's worth noting, though, is that, again, all of this is an advantage of DirectX 12. Which, I've recently upgraded my computer, so most of my computer's pretty nice. The one thing that is kind of lagging behind now is my graphics card, because I kind of brought it from my older computer to my modern computer, because at the time that I built this computer, which was like 2020, 2021, GPUs were super expensive. It was like a big, so I opted to upgrade that later, and later hasn't happened yet. So, all right, let's see what else they have to say about it, because we just looked into it. Let's go. Yeah, it was the crypto thing. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Next is ray tracing, which I won't be able to show you because I don't have an RTX available or whatever graphics card. But in 2023, Eve shadow system received a significant upgrade to cascading shadows, dynamically enhancing visual depth compared to older systems, which had not seen an update in many years. CCP are now excited to introduce ray trace shadows, offering unparalleled accuracy in shadow rendering. Leveraging dedicated hardware found in modern graphics card, ray tracing shadows can even outperform traditional methods in certain scenes. Ray trace shadows are generated using sophisticated rendering techniques, which simulates the physical behavior of light. It calculates the precise path rays of light takes from the game's primary light source, the star in each solar system, through the scene, accurately determining how those rays interact with surfaces and objects. Unlike traditional shadow rendering methods, ray trace shadows precisely replicate how shadows form based on object positions, distances, angles, and surface textures. For example, so the way this works is, I will not use RT and Eve. The FPS drop is not worth it. I mean, that's probably fair. But also, like, this is a fairly limited application of ray tracing. So basically, the way it works is that lighting in most games are like one of the heaviest components of the graphics processing system of each frame, right? The lighting system is a big cost component. And so a lot of game design and optimization is surrounding the lighting system, right? You can bake in lighting, you can cheat your lighting system in multiple ways, right? The problem is in Eve, like direct shadows from a point light or from any light source is always kind of a challenge, right? The fact that you can affect like an entire panel of something, like if something explodes near you, it lights up your ship. That used to not be that way, but that's fairly easy to do now because of reflection probes and stuff like that. So you have these like tools where you can put, rather than having every single thing managing its own reflections, you have these reflection probes, and the reflection probes manage the reflections in the area, and then the things that need to do the reflecting just kind of take the data from the reflection probes in order to manage the reflections, right? Same as we have light probes for lighting. So the consequence of this is that a lot of lighting, and especially a lot of shadows, are approximated. Well, yeah. Hey, I'm not explaining it just for you. I'm explaining it for everyone. But as a programmer, I hope that you can, or people can correct me if they want to. But I'm just trying to explain things for people that might not know. But so lighting in Eve is fairly approximate. You can see it here. Like this is what, if you see a lot of games that, especially games that are like made in Unity, you'll see shadows that look like this. Even higher quality shadows will look like this, with like each piece being like blocks that are estimated, right? Whereas with ray tracing, the way it works is, so like here you have a shadow map and it applies to the thing, but with ray tracing, what it does is it generates a bunch of different rays from the light source and then tracks where each ray goes, and this allows for better reflections and better lighting system. This is why, like, in particular, when it comes to most games with the meme RTX on, the big thing is better reflections, right? But in this case, we're talking about shadows. So this is basically just a lot of ways of saying that we are using ray tracing here in order to make crisper shadows. By we, I mean they. While ray tracing is a technology that can potentially provide additional visual enhancements such as reflections or global illumination, EVE Online will currently utilize ray tracing exclusively for shadows. This focused implementation allows us to ensure optimal performance and fidelity. Future adoption of other ray tracing features can be explored later, but for now, ray tracing shadows represents the next exciting step towards integrating modern advanced rendering techniques. So we can see here, like right now, that shadow would be like, you can actually see. Oh, no. So this is like, you can see the shadow going across the body is very glitchy or like boxy. And then as this goes over, it becomes far smoother. Is this a big deal? Not really. However, like it's funny because I'm always talking to newer players. And one of the things that newer players are constantly surprised by is how good the game looks. And that is true because of the fact that CCP is constantly making these little tweaks, these little improvements to The boxy shadow is just an optimization thing. They intentionally made it like that to make it efficient. I mean, yeah, that's what, yeah. Eve was ahead of the shadow generation game when it came to RTS space games, even in 2007. Right, yeah. They have always been pushing the envelope of visual fidelity. Now, part of that is because of the fact that EVE Online as a spaceship game has a lot of advantages to making things look good because, like, most of the game is just empty space. But it is true that CCP continues to work on little things like this, little things like the fire, little things like different lighting systems that make the game continually look good. And these kinds of things are almost like subliminally affect your perception, especially things like lighting. Lighting is one of those things that you may not necessarily appreciate like consciously, but usually the difference between a game that looks really good or like pretty good versus a game that looks exceptionally good, the only difference is actually the lighting. With so many ships, it would be really hard to make high quality shadows. Well, the other thing is that EVE has a pretty aggressive LOD system. So a lot of things, like once you get one stage out in the zooming out or far enough away from a thing, it's no longer rendering things like its shadows and stuff as much, or like pretty much. So, you know, so the LOD system is a big component for things to remain performant at larger scales of ships. Okay. Both advanced upscaling and ray trace shadows depend on your compatible software and hardware. If you do not see an expected option for the settings page in game, you should update your OS, update your GPU drivers, check hardware compatibility, and make sure you're running in DirectX 12. There was a Reddit post where they talked about this. Actually, hold on. So here, there has been a lot of complaints about DirectX 12 not working, especially with multiple clients running. I have also noticed that the game has become much more difficult to run with other things. Although I've also noticed that about a lot of my games or things like even like Phasmophobia. If I'm playing YouTube on the other screen, it will cause the YouTube to like be very chunky and even lose like it'll buffer. But when I click off of the game, it works just fine. And as you can see here, like if I click onto the game, my FPS goes up. If I click off the game, my FPS goes back down. So there's some throttling when it's not on screen or not the main focus. Do you remember the EVE NVIDIA demo with destructible interactable asteroids? I do remember that. There's been a lot of crazy stuff. NVIDIA and EVE Online worked really hard together for a while. But either way, oh yeah, I didn't show you that, guys, that effectively. So you can see I click on the game, it goes up. I click away from the game, it goes down. So like I've had a lot of problems with multi-boxing recently, but I don't have that big of a problem with that because A, you can go to potato mode, and B, I don't like multi-boxing much. Either way. So we see here we got CCP has been working on upscaling stuff for a while now. I'm glad that they're finally able to deliver on it with FSR1 basically just being a fancy implementation of Lanxos. EVE hasn't been able to offer a temporal upscaling method before, so this should improve image quality on low performance machines that want to render at higher than 1080p. I'm still undecided if the TAA-based upscaler is good. I also think that, actually, now that I think about it, a big piece of it is that I now have like this monitor that I'm running EVE on right now is a 4K monitor, and that's what causes a lot of my other stuff to just chug, and I think that that's partly because of my 1070, but it is true that I have that issue. Anywho, we could still have the new upscalers for DX11, so there's a question about why is this not going to DX11, since a lot of the people are not very happy with DX12 support yet in EVE Online. And so we have CCP Caffeine that posts, there are several reasons that this was not done with this release. People who are truly limited to DirectX 11 hardware typically use drivers that are much older. Due to the age of the physical hardware, this causes its own challenges. During some of the initial internal testings, we saw several cases where DX11 limited hardware had issues. In some instances, we were not able to ship it due to the issues with middleware at the time. Oh, there's a post to GitHub. Memory leak. Oh, that's... Memory leaks are bad. There's no escaping the fact that supporting 2 APIs with all of its features is double the testing and fixing at a minimum. This is one of those invisible things that really does take up a lot of time. So basically, it's a resistance against technical debt. I do not want 4K monitors yet for gaming. Yeah, and sometimes I actually like downscale my monitor so that way it functions at 1080p still. But in Eve, I actually really like the 4K because, I mean, I already run my UI at 90% upscaling. Or sorry, 90% scaling because that's the lowest it can get. I want like small boxes so that way I can get more on the screen. If I put this over here, not only does the screen get smaller, but you can see that like all my boxes are actually just a bigger chunk of the screen. And that's why I prefer it on the 4K. I do, yeah, a 70% GUI, being able to scale the GUI as far as you want and then scaling the text separately than that would be super awesome. But either way, that's a whole nother thing. Games I don't have proper upscaling like Eve, not use a small app called lossless scaling. If you can DM me that in Discord, so that way I can look into it afterwards, that'd be great. But in the meantime, we're keeping the DirectX 11 as simple as possible. We know it's used by quite a few people in the community through choice, so we're keeping the changes to a minimum there. I'm not saying that other upscalers won't appear in DirectX 11 at a later date. I honestly don't know right now. We're going to give feedback on what has been released first and evaluate over time. FSR1 is still present, though. If you just want raw performance boost on the GPU, you can get it much simpler. There's no current plans to sunset DirectX 11 support. However, we are not likely to add many features to it beyond keeping it compatible. When it's deprecated isn't my call, but I can share those discussions have not even started. So that's a big point. You know, like, again, a lot of people do like DirectX 11 because it's more stable, I guess, is a way of putting it, than DirectX 12, especially when it comes to EVE Online. However, this question of technical debt, especially for a game that is going on over 2 decades, is always a big one. And so CCP, like, the idea that they're not going to be adding new features to DirectX 11, but they are going to be adding in new features and support to DirectX 12, in my opinion, makes total sense. Because that also means that, like, if you really, like, if DirectX 12 is giving you problems for whatever reason, including new features that are put in, you can always revert back to DirectX 11, turn off all of those things, and get a more stable system. It's like an LTS support versus using the latest version of an engine or something, right? So yeah, and then this is just a back and forth about people complaining about multi-boxing with DirectX 12. But I would be interested to hear your guys' experience with DirectX 12, DirectX 11, better graphics cards. Make sure to point out in the comments below what your graphics card is when you talk about it. But I am interested to hear how people are finding out or like this stuff, if you've changed what type of upscaling you're using, etc., etc. But I think that that's probably about all that I can milk out of this particular topic. Let's see if there's anything on the forums about it. No? What happened? No? Okay. Well, I guess this was it would be this patch, right? Because this was the patch notes? No. No, that's the expansion notes. Interesting. No, this is 18 days ago. Here we go. 7 days ago. No, nothing valuable here. Got it. All right. Yeah. So that's about it for this topic. Cool. Excellent. I will look at that after the show. Okay. So now then, that's it for upscaling and kind of the news of the day. and the patch note. Like, I could go over the patch notes, but the patch notes are literally, we put it in upscaling. Like, I went and looked. Let's go to HoboLeaks real quick. See, make sure that there wasn't something else snuck in. Yeah, today's patch is all background files. Like, this is the graphics and stuff. So let's make sure. Yep, that's a change in the text about graphics. This is from 4 days ago. So yeah, that's all that happened today. Let us jump into the monthly economic report. Yay! Okay, so we go over the monthly economic report every month. It is worth noting before we jump into anything that it is the 18th of August, and I have all of the previous economic reports from the last 4 months, and we can see that it was the 7th, the 9th, the 4th, and the 10th. So this is over a week later than we normally get. I don't know how much that's going to affect information because I think this is still just going to be July. But it is worth noting that there is, for some reason, we get it later. So let's see what they have to say. Economic Capsuleers, the monthly economic report for July 2025 is now available. MER was delayed due to some data processing issues. We're reviewing our pipeline for the MER. There you go. So that's why. It wasn't because they were on vacation or whatever. It's that their tooling was causing them some issues, and so they had to fix things. Which makes sense because didn't they just... no, this is just analysis. I thought they had recently. It is likely that we're going to remove the import, export, and trade balance plots from the MER due to data source being deprecated. We are working with the EVE development team to get new data source that will give us more verbose data, enabling. So yeah, they've been working on this stuff in the background. So it's very likely that like it just happened to hitch their stuff and so required a little bit more processing this month. Either way. And it's summer. Whatever. It's fine. Okay, so first things first, production and destruction. So May, June, July. So we're looking at just kind of the, well, actually, let's compare it to the previous month. So in the previous month, we see that it's just going straight down and then it cuts off like kind of right as it begins to straighten down. So we can see that here it has... Hold up. So it was just crossing about this threshold before. Hold on. This is right? June, July. Yeah. So it continues to go down. And it has kind of had some steps, but basically it's been a pretty straight downward trend when it comes to production. And we can see here. We talked about last time how the majority of production that was lost was from nullsec. And we can see this kind of steps up and then up a little bit and then stops. We go here. We can see that it kind of continued to go up, but it did even out towards the end and actually goes down a little bit towards the... And remember, down means more production in nullsec. So that reflects kind of this last spike up. Just a little bit of like coming back when it comes to that. As far as destruction and mining goes, we were seeing the mining line spike up above destruction line again. You know, these two lines go up and down against each other. This was the first time that mining has been significantly above destruction for a while. This was with all of those mining boosts. This was right before the production boost. But now it has crossed back down below mining, and we see this month that trend has actually been reversed. We see that the mining has scooped back upwards, while destruction does tend to go a little bit further down. Actually, it goes, yeah, so destruction was on its upswing, and they were just about to cross over each other. And we can see right there that basically instead of crossing over each other, destruction dropped back down. That could very well be just because the summer has been going on, and there was a lot of dread brawls that made this go up. And it's kind of quieted down a little bit since then. But we can see that mining here has gone back up. So mining was just strictly falling back, falling in nullsec. And now it has started to, again, eke back out. Destruction we see this big spike. A lot of that increase in destruction came from low sec, as we can see. And then now that is kind of continued, but it's also dropped off and come back up. So it's kind of, it's now oscillating at slightly higher value now. It has taken a good bite out of high sec. That is high sec, right? Hold on. Am I even right? Yes. Pochfin is a little bit down comparatively. But nullsec is pretty stable, so a lot of the big low-sec destruction has kind of corresponded with either a fall in high-sec destruction or at least like nullsec and low-sec being up above, you know, higher than normal, right? So that's that. Key economic figures by region. Pochfin, 26 trillion. Let's look at what it was. I can't remember. I had a lot of stuff corrected to me by Drake last month or the month before. Now I can't remember all of the things about how the numbers work, but we'll just try. 2.7 trillion versus 2.6 trillion. That's destruction, right? Yeah. So slight reduction in destruction in Pochfin. Mining in Pochfin, 0.3 versus 0.26. So mining is actually up in Pochfin. Exports and imports, I'm not too worried about. Yeah, that's probably good. Asteroid ore mined over time. July, we can see that there has been a big... Interesting. So, June... When was the Revenant Major update? Hold on. January, March. Okay, great. Yeah, so the Revenant Major update is what causes this big spike in nullsec mining, right? Boom, nullsec gets buffs. They're mining a bunch more. And then it goes down. And then in July, it has gone back up again. That's really odd. So, like, the big change this month in mining came from pyrite, which is high sec. So I would have expected, like, we do see a bit of an uptick in there. Imperium moved, yeah, but like this is productivity of. So you're saying like, well, Imperium moved in June, right? No, that was mostly in July. That's an interesting graph. We're gonna look at the mining. Hold on, let's look at asteroid mined by region. Innsmother. Who's in Innsmother right now? Goons. Yeah, because Innsmother is like no wait, where even is Innsmother? Hold on. No way. Hold on, I'm missing it. I can't even find it on the list. Amencia? Wait. What about Amencia? Because this says Innsmother. Is it towards the end? Hold on. There it is. Holy shit. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, yeah, Innsmother was taken from Horde. Okay, so Innsmother goes from down here to 7 billion. That's a lot of mining. That's a big change. Getting more than Fountain. When was the last time? Wait, hold on. Fountain. Amencia. Imperium moved from Amencia to Innsmother. Is that what happened? I know there's probably somebody like, oh my god, this guy doesn't know anything. I don't like. It's a lot of names. I'm just I validate my assumptions. So Paragon Fall, Impasse, Immensia. Interesting. Okay. So yeah, that's a big, but I saw, okay, so the Reddit post though about this. Where is it? Monthly economic report. Frat out mining and ratting everyone again, while Init is topping the per capita income from null blocks. So where is Frat then? Tenerifis, that's right. I remember that. So where's Frat then? Veil of the Silent? Is that going to be? Why are people saying that? Yeah. So why are people saying that Frat is mining more than everyone else when goons are here? That's... Am I crazy? Like, and then people are like making excuses. Goons and hordes are still both getting moved and settled. But like, oops, this seems to show, I mean, yeah, it might just be propaganda, but like, I'm looking at this Innsmother. If goons are in Innsmother, which is what sounds right, this is a lot of mining. maybe it's just that, well, it could very well be that like Frat has multiple regions. And so they're like adding together multiple regions. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Container. Does anybody have like a good... Hold on. Daily Sov map. So we have Tribute, Veil of the Silent, Tenal, and Branch. So Veil of the Silent. Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. There has been a lot of changes in the last 3 months. I love how people are talking about like how stagnant everything is, even though we have had such a huge, crazy change in just the overall like structure of nullsec. Now, obviously, the power blocks haven't changed up too much, but definitely the nullsec like system, like the overall balance of like where people are, has changed quite a bit. I wonder if we could find that. Does anybody have like a daily Sov map? Like for the year? When does this one? Oh God, shh. All right. So this is, oh my God. At least it's an evad. Hold on, what year is this so far? Hold on, let me look real quick. Where are we at? What time are we at? 2023. Okay, that's still not good. 2023, 2024. So we see Frat and Goon Swarm over here. This is going to be before the move, isn't it? Oh, nope. There it is. It just happened. Okay, what? That was useless. All right, we're gonna have to keep on. I mean, yeah, I'm not a big nullsec dude either, but it's you know, just trying to pay attention. And again, I like to validate my assumptions, so that's why I'm getting the information from you guys, so that way we can get as good of information as we can. Ah! Oh. Yeah, but this shows now, not other days. Oh well. All right, let's keep going. Either way, the point is that goons are mining a lot, And so a lot of this uptick in mining, 2.5 to 3 billion, a lot of that is coming from Imperium mining a shit ton. Because, you know, they declared their war over and have been becoming super productive ever since. Okay, so gas. Wormhole gas is continuing to trend downward from June. But it's also worth noting that June saw a spike, probably because of this increase in production that was around this time. You know, capitals and other stuff do require wormhole gas, but over time that has kind of cooled off, and we see a lot of it coming down to that cooling off manifesting as wormhole gas. Now, like low sec, null sec gas is a little bit down. Low sec is pretty stable. High sec gas is pretty rare. Gas volumed by region, Iridia. I think that's probably pretty typical, right? Yeah, Iridia went from 35 million to 35 million. So yeah, gas overall is pretty stable. There's gas in high sec. I mean, there's some. Ice mined over time, general trend slightly up across the last couple of years, but mostly stable with a slight uptick in July. Looks like most of that uptick is in nullsec. Probably, like, that's just a natural consequence. It seems to match that asteroid mining. So, like, this is a lower reflection of, you know, people are just mining and doing more in nullsec this last month when it comes to mining. So some of that gets reflected in ice, and that's about it. So the Forge remains the #1 in ice, which makes sense, 5 billion to 5 billion. Honestly, not much looks different in these charts. Ice is ice. Everybody needs it. And not much has changed with it. So from here, we have moon minerals with R4s continuing to be a little bit less than half of all of the R4s are mined via Athenors, or Metanoxes. The green is Metanoxes, the orange is refineries. The R8s and R16s are almost, and really the R32s are the ones that are almost exclusively mined by Metanoxes. And then R64s, I do find it interesting that we have continued to see like this increased amount of R64s being mined by this, because you do lose some stuff by mining on an R64, you know, by mining with a Metanox over a typical moon drill. But this kind of shows that at least somebody finds a lot of value in just throwing Metanoxes on it and not having to worry about it. But we also do see, while the Metanox level is very steady, we do see a trend back upwards of how much is being mined, but not as much as it was before. This is probably the reason why these spikes are higher before, is because of all of these the move ops and such, et cetera, et cetera. It's also true, and I don't know how true this is per se, but like we've been talking about how the changes in Eve has caused like a rebalance of what space is valuable. And what made space valuable before this was the population of R64 moons. So it is true, like it is possible rather, that as like now the more priority is based around systems that are good for Equinox, that could represent a shift away from valuing regions with R64 moons towards valuing regions that are good for Equinox, which could reduce the overall amount of R64 moons being mined, which is why we see these big spikes kind of evaporate. We're going to have to continue to watch over time whether or not this goes back up as like people rebuild their empires out of war, or if this continues to be lower as Equinox has changed the balance of what makes a system valuable or not. All right. It's also worth noting that Equinox is basically when we start to see an increase in use of an increase of use of metanoxes for our 64s. All right, moon minerals by region. Veil of the Silent, which I think we pointed out is mostly fraternity space, is the one that uses more refineries than almost anybody else. Who's in Fountain now? Wait. Where is Fountain? Fountain. Initiative. Okay. So Initiative is using more metanoxes, but mining almost as much as Veil of the Silent. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And they went from being the top with 12 trillion to second to top. This must be the chart that's causing them to say this stuff, right? Because Veil of the Silent so this analysis is analyzing basically exclusively, or like looking at the moon mining, because that matches the moon mining charts, right? Veil of the Silent being, or rather, hold on. No? Yes. Hey, Wizard. We're just looking at the MER. So Veil of the Silent, which is Frat, has been doing the most at over 1 trillion, with Fountain being just under 1 trillion, whereas before Veil of the Silent was, wait. So it's actually overall lower, which feels right. Yeah, because we see kind of an overall little bit of a lower trend across the board when it comes to moon mining, and that is reflected by this fact that this, sorry. Yeah, so this has gone from like 1.2 trillion as like the top end here down to 1 trillion as the top end here, representing almost a 20% reduction in mining in Fountain. But again, like a lot of these things go up and down based on what moons happen to be available when, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. Imports and exports. This is the funny one that I think people pointed out correctly in the Reddit. So normally we see in our imports and exports are always kind of a random thing because it's like, you know, it doesn't represent the amount of trade, right? So like the forage can fluctuate because like it's got such a big amount in the forage that the difference can like be a big fluctuation depending on what is going on. But one of the things that this is really useful for is for things like move ops. And so here, once again, we see the Goon Swarm absolutely dominating the charts, as Tenerifis has a 259 trillion ISK export ledger, where Innsmother, where they go to, has a 320 trillion ISK import amount. That is wild, and basically, as you can see, blows out the rest of the chart almost pretty much combined. Like that move op represents the largest shift of value in the universe by a significant margin. Now, it doesn't represent the absolute amount of the Forge, where Forge has almost 500 trillion in and 445 trillion out. But still, like, that move op is incredibly impressive when it comes to the numbers. ISK sinks and faucets. So here we have bounties are at 41 trillion, where before they were at 40 trillion, or well, 40.9. So 40.9 to 41.7. So almost 1 trillion increase in bounties, whereas before... So bounties were higher for a while. Yeah, we can see that. So 43 in March, it was... $46. So overall, we had a dip down in ratting. But what we've seen is a slight uptick back. Not to the same levels as it was before, but more than last month. Okay, great. Commodity market is 39 to 40, so that's fine. ESS main bank auto payment, which is the other metric for ratting, went from 20 trillion to 21.9 trillion, so that's pretty much reflects the fact that most of this increase in ratting is in nullsec. Sanchez incursions are usually pretty steady. Triglavian invasions might be an interesting one to look at. Let's see. 9 trillion from... Oof, hold on. Triglavian invasions. Yeah, 9 trillion. So that's steady. Agent mission rewards, 3.7 trillion, down from 3.9 trillion. Pirate fobs go from 3 trillion to 3.7 trillion. Wait, nope. It's down to 2.2 trillion. It's actually down below insurance, which is pretty crazy. I mean, not totally crazy, but still. We have Ministry of Internal Order. So, Amar home fronts still being the top with Caldari, then Galente, then Mimitar. Project Discovery is at 747 billion, which it was at 1 trillion. Wait, what? So Project Discovery is down quite a bit. That's an interesting one. I like to use Project Discovery as kind of just a baseline. Yeah, Project Discovery is down pretty significantly, which is interesting. I wonder if that's because people are just doing things more actively, or maybe they're multi-boxing more. I'm not sure. The script studio turning down? What? I don't know anything about that one. And then down here, LP store, which is a good indicator of like faction warfare, is down from 18, 20, 18, 17, and now it's at 16. So it's low, but it's within like there's a Project Discovery script. I don't know anything about a Project Discovery script. I don't think that would necessarily make this particular month more likely to be the month that goes down, Mullen. I don't think any more people reach 500 on average than before. That might be an interesting thing to pay attention to. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. Because that is a pretty significant... That's almost a 20 or 30% drop over the normal for Project Discovery. There was a bot that ran Project Discovery. I hadn't even... It's always really funny because, like, the idea of botting Project Discovery historically has been almost absurd because, like, the whole reason why we do Project Discovery is because these are things that humans are good at and bots are bad at. But, I mean, I imagine that as time goes on and the data set becomes more well-known, then, yeah, you could totally bot it. So, yeah, I don't know anything about the story about the Project Discovery script. All right. Well, humans are good at pattern recognition. Computers are good at optimization. But yeah, okay. Commodity faucets over time for July. That's true. The bot doesn't have to be good. It just has to pass the test. So in July, we see a re-uptick in rogue drone analysis data. Again, this is probably coming from an overall stabilization of nullsec with the end of the wars and stuff like that. Bounty encrypted bonds is also ticking up a lot higher than it normally is. That's from ESS raids, I think, right? Overseer personal effects has been pretty low because a lot of the stuff that involves overseer personal effects, we haven't had very many events. Yeah, just a lot of the supplies of overseer personal effects have kind of been less interesting recently. Triglavian data is also down, which is probably more of a matter of could be less abyssing. Again, I think that a lot of this has to do with just summer being summer. And so like the things that you would normally just do because you're bored is not being done as much because people are out doing things for summer. Probably. That would be my guess. So because like a lot of these things, like Overseer personal effects comes from a lot of solo activity. Triglavian data comes from solo activities. But yeah, I'm not sure. And then high-end stuff like rogue drone analysis data is popping up. It's a Cobra problem? The goal of most players of Project Discovery isn't to help with research, it's to get a Marshall BPC. Well, that's fine. The goal of Project Discovery is to direct people's desire to get ISK and power into doing science one way or another. I mean, if it's been successfully botted, then that kind of implies that we've completed, like we're past the threshold of where our continued work may be valuable for Project Discovery. I think that this might be a big piece of this is the fact that they revamped Project Discovery without actually changing it at all. So now Project Discovery as we have it today is very stale compared to, you know, before. We've been doing the same Project Discovery since 2020, right? Because it was originally COVID. The UK and India would have bounties on cobras to reduce the amount of cobra bite incidents, so locals started to breed them because they were chasing the wrong incentives. Yeah, that reminds me. The bot gets points even if it fails. My point is that I think that these are indicators that Project Discovery is stale. Like the data set is, the value out of the data set might be pretty close to complete. This actually reminds me, Wizard, of like when I'm walking my dog, right? Like one of the problems is like if you want to reward your dog for doing the right behavior, but if the dog is acting out, you want to like they got to start doing the correct behavior, and then you reward. Like if my dog is jumping up on somebody and I say down and I reward her, I've actually caused two potential things to be learned. One, that like listening is good, and that's good, right? But the problem is that if I'm not rewarding her very frequently outside of that, then what she knows is that she must first start doing the wrong thing, jumping on somebody, and then when I tell her not to stop, and that's what gets her the reward. And so to get the most rewards, she must actually jump on everybody she possibly can. So the key here is that you can reward that behavior. Hey, get down. Oh, thank you. Here you go. But it has to be part of an ongoing thing of rewarding her for listening to you, ongoing, even if that means like as I'm walking with her, the more she just sits there calmly walking with me, I just every once in a while feed her a treat. Hey, you're doing the right thing. Hey, you're doing the right thing. So that way the treat doesn't only happen when she does the bad thing and then corrects it, because that just makes them want to do the bad thing more, right? If you reward your kid for cleaning up the mess, then you're also rewarding your kid for making the mess. Okay, so top 8 sinks and faucets over time. Pretty quiet. We do see a big upswing in Sanche incursions. I wonder if that means more organization about it. I have heard some more stuff with Sanche incursions. There haven't been any changes in Sanche incursions, but I did see some people talking about it on Reddit. I don't know if there's like a more active thing. It's another thing that CSP limit the rate of submission to 5 samples per minute and a maximum sample per day. So, well, yeah, that's been true for a while now. Yeah, the current Project Discovery is almost 5 years old. They did revamp the data set, but they kept it basically the same. Whereas with previous Project Discoveries, they were fundamentally different than previous iterations. We can see that LP store uptick right there. Yep, that pretty much coincides with most of what we've seen already. Overall wealth and money supply. Interestingly enough, we see a big drop in character money. I mean, we not as big as, or we've seen drops like that before. I wonder if that's people like one of the biggest problems with this graph, especially after, well, before this was made, when alpha counts were made, the decision, like, this is active characters, and the definition for an active character got changed now, because obviously a subbed account is not the only definition of an active character. A person can just be an alpha and be an active character. So their definition of an active character is somebody who isn't logging in, basically. If you don't log in for a period of time, that account is now considered inactive. I think if you pay for your account, it's still considered active. So this could be seen as people either unsubbing or just generally going inactive, rather than like some weird huge increase in syncs. Because if we go up here, I mean, like the ISK syncs haven't, like, well, hold on, 124.5 trillion in syncs. Wait, active ISK delta of 130 trillion. Okay, so this is 136 trillion. This is 124 trillion. What? Man, this number doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't this number be this number minus this number? So shouldn't this be like 13 trillion? Or 13... Yeah, 13 trillion instead of 130 trillion? What am I missing here? Okay. So at the beginning of the month... Okay, got it, got it. So at the beginning of the month, we had 2.5 trillion. 147 trillion was put in through faucets. 124 trillion was taken out through sinks. But you have an active ISK delta of 130 trillion because it dropped by 130 trillion total, which means basically 110, 115 trillion of that came from people going inactive. Whereas here we have 750 billion down. Here we have up 5 trillion. So yeah, that makes so much sense, because in May, we have a lot of people like coming back for war and for other stuff. So the active ISK delta goes up, or at least less people are leaving the system. And then now a lot of this drop is actually caused by people going inactive. So we could probably suggest that like a lot of this spike up could be from people coming back to the game, and this spike down be people, like, people came into the game, stopped playing around here, started being considered inactive there, right? Could be. Right, it doesn't get deleted, but it does stop getting counted. That's why we see these big spikes isn't necessarily like big increase in wealth or like people earning a bunch of ISK. It is often representative of people coming back into the game. Database requirements must be huge to support accounts since 2003. Man, their stuff is crazy. Hold on. If you ever want to... There's a great blog from 2023 that goes all into the actual server architecture that they have. And their server architecture is wild. Like, yes, their database is crazy. I've talked to the devs at 2FanFest, and the work that they do is incredible. It is Herculean. Like, these guys are absolute industry leaders in a lot of these things. All right, velocity of ISK has remained fairly stable since 2022. We did have some big spikes, especially during that industry time. A lot of people were building up stuff and trading stuff and all that stuff, but it has dropped back down, and it is ticking a little bit back up, but like whatever, it's fine. Dead game. Mineral price indexes has come back down to, we're going to call, not necessarily reasonable levels, but like, interestingly enough, so scarcity So back here is the reign of the Rorqual, when everything was, to be frank, well, actually, sorry, this dip right here, right? This 2018, 2019 dip, this was the reign of the Rorqual, right? So 2016 and before was pre-reign of the Rorqual. I don't know why things were so low in 2010 to 2011. Although I know that like gunboat mining was a big thing back then too. So people got minerals by shooting things. And then they, I think probably around this time, they got rid of gunboat mining, which meant that people had to actually mine in order to get their minerals. So that made it go up. And then Reign of the Rorqual pushed it back down. Scarcity spikes it up. And then it kind of stabilizes. But then we do see, like, as Equinox happens, especially, it goes out of control. And now there's been a lot of industry changes or mining changes that have been done, Revenant major update, pyrite changes, etc., that is trying to bring back down the MPI. So it has undone the spike that came from Equinox, but we are still basically at the high point of scarcity. I don't actually know whether or not that's considered to be healthy or not. I would expect us to want to push it down all the way down to at least this dip, this post-scarcity or this like late-stage scarcity dip. But, you know, the idea here is that, remember, guys, like, yes, this theoretically makes ships and stuff more expensive, although the graph kind of shows that it doesn't in a lot of ways. But this is straight up just like miners and especially low-end miners being able to get value for their work. Yeah, exactly. The other graphs are pretty stable, which is pretty fine, right? So this just means that miners are making more money. Here is the economic indexes zoomed a little bit further in. We do see a tick down in secondary producer and primary producer as the mineral price index goes down. And as far as the consumer price index, a lot of it is in, hold on, Tech 1 modules, which is always a weird one because people don't usually rely on Tech 1 modules. And accessories, which is usually Plex stuff. Plex! Oh, Plex! We shouldn't talk about the economy without talking about Plex. So, Plex, we don't have historical data, but it was at like about somewhere between 6.2 to 6.5 prior to this. And then they made that change. So now Plex can be purchased everywhere. And as we noticed, like at first, it didn't really do much, right? It still stayed at that 6 to 6.3 limit. But it is absolutely true that over the last month or so, it is trending down to the point where now Plex is sitting at 5.8 to 5.5. This is the lowest that Plex has been in like over a year, I think. It's hard for me to say because we don't have very good historical data about Plex anymore, but like, say what you will, the Plex change seems to have worked. But also no big nest sales, mostly cash sales. Yeah, you mean, so like, because there's not been that much nest sales, there hasn't been that much pressure on Plex to keep up. Plex prices are still too damn high. They're always too damn high. When it was 350 million a month to sub, it was still too high. I mean, I understand that argument that like there hasn't been a big reason, like a sale to put pressure on Plex to go up, which may actually be, I mean, like that's probably good. I actually really like the idea that the majority of their sales, going back to that FOMO article, if what they're trying to say is they're going to be doing more sales on the purchasing for ISK side of things instead of purchasing for Plex side of things, so that way people can't stack those rewards. I kind of think that that's probably a good thing. Don't sales make it go down? No, so if there's a sale in the Nest store, which is this store, If there's a sale here, then that makes Plex prices go up because people need Plex to buy things from this store. So if there's a sale on Plex, then that makes Plex prices go down. But if there's a sale on the market that people spend Plex on, then people need Plex to buy it for the NES. So then they buy it up off the market, causing the price per Plex to go up. So that's good. I mean, that's good. Plex could be lower, but remember, like, Plex is a relative value. Like, it's set by us. The more people that are trying to sub their accounts, the more Plex is going to go up. The more people that are trying to spend Plex to get skins or whatever, the more Plex is going to go up. The more people that just need liquid ISK right now, the more Plex is going to go down. For a while there, we didn't have a cash sale without an ensuing nest sale. You're right. Absolutely. MTX sales drives demand up. Plex sales drives supply up. I'm not sure what MTX sale means, but I think I agree with your statement. I need liquid alcohol now. Hey, man. Okay, so low-end minerals, both mineral types have gone down. But of course, low-end minerals saw this up, up, and up. A lot of this came from pyrite. Next, okay, got it. Yeah. So if we go here and we look at pyrite, do we have it on the quick bar? No, why not? Add to market quick bar. There we go. So if we look at pyrite, we can see that it, again, first of all, pyrite has tripled in the last year, right? This goes back to why everybody's saying that there's a problem with pyrite right now. We've talked about this before. If we look at the now, we can see that the first change to pyrite that CCP did an all right job at like tempering it, but it kind of built up. The last pyrite change that CCP just did seems to have done basically nothing. So it's still good to sell pyrite. It's still at 30 ISK per unit. It's a little bit lower now, but like pyrite is still a huge, huge, huge piece of the economy, or of the cost differences now. We look at titanium. Titanium is actually still trending down a little bit. Microtransactions, thank you. Okay. So it looks like a lot of this loss is actually non-pyrite low-end minerals, which is probably not exactly what CCP wanted, but still. Primary producer index. Ooh, we see a big loss in, is that raw moon or is that, yeah, raw moon materials goes down. Star-based structures? Why would that even be matter, let alone go down or up? This is a big bright red. Hold on, what is that? That is commodities. Okay, whatever. Advanced moon materials is down a little bit. Nothing too exciting to see here. Secondary producer price index. Big red. Salvaged materials going down. That, I mean, like, salvaging has kind of gone down in value a lot recently. We saw... When was... So the Drifter Crisis was mostly this year. So some of this might have been Drifter Crisis stuff, but it is continued to go down even this month, which is interesting. I wonder why salvage would be going down in value. Less rigs needed for new structures? Is that true, though? I mean, like, people have been still putting down a bunch of structures. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting one. I do like, this is a reminder that we're supposed to be getting Gold Rush, and it should theoretically tie into salvaging at some point. So who knows? Ship and module price index. Modules are down from April. Ships are down as well. So, I mean, you know, if we go back again, this dip is the reign of the Rorqual. So people that are complaining about the cost of ships from the reign of the Rorqual, like it's only about 10% up from pre-reign of the Rorqual, right? Like that would be just like barely even considered inflation. The reason why people freak out about this is that the reign of the Rorqual included a 20% slash in the value of all ships. Like, that's crazy. And that entire loss of value was a loss of value for miners, but particularly high-sec miners. Because if you weren't able to mine in nullsec with a bunch of Rorquals, like one Rorqual was mining the equivalent of like an entire high-sec corporation. They're complaining about the price of caps, not subcaps mostly. No, because I see people complaining about things like battleships too. But like, well, people are likely being motivated by the price of caps predominantly. But when people talk about how much everything is expensive nowadays, they do tend to try to use lower end stuff because that way they can be like, think of the new bros, right? Some of the major salvage stockpilers were looking to shift out after it was found out how much each of them had been stockpiling. Oh no, that's global ships. T1 is definitely way more expensive than in the past, while T3s are cheaper than ever. I don't, well, let's go with Thorax. I mean, I'm trying to remember my old, my old, like, how much I would have bought a cruiser for in, like, 2018. I don't think 15 million for a cruiser is unreasonable. I'll just say that. Salvage is much more abundant in nullsec exploration with detected sites. Oh, yeah, that is actually a really good point, too. And we should actually look at that, too. Do we have, like, exploration loot? Is that somewhere on here? That's probably a big piece of it, is actually the exploration stuff. Yeah, that's actually... It's not IMO? Oh, too much? Yeah. What's a good exploration doodad? Like, what is the thing that we can look at to see the impact of the exploration changes? Data cores? No. I mean, salvage is good. Metamolecular thingablobs? Flywheels? Covert, no, not covert. Salvage, especially T2, is way down. That's actually probably, yeah, okay. Intact armor plates. Yep, exactly, Sean. Good job. Intact armor plates. That's what we're going to go with. Intact armor plates. Woo! Okay. Hold on. Wait a minute. Oh, shit. I wasn't showing it. Look at that. When was that added? Was that Legion? So Legion was 5/27. May. So May, yeah, okay. That's pretty fucking dramatic. So like the #1 exploration loot was cut in half by the Legion changes. That's That's pretty dramatic. Let's see. Less bad, still bad. No, not ancient. Just normal salvage. What else is good? Enhanced ward console? Oh, yeah. Okay. You know, it's funny, Havoc, because one of the things I was just... we just did intact armor plates. Wait. Hold on. Why did that... Wait. Something just went, like, really weird with my chat, because it just showed up. Okay, no, intact shield. I can't read correctly. Intact, yeah, shield emitters. Is it sustained? No. Intact shield emitter. There it is. Not as bad. Not as bad. Which actually makes sense, because it's probably going to be directly based on, like, which areas of space has the most people doing these exploration sites, right? Ward consoles. Ooh, yeah. That's the one we were just looking at. So, this is one of those things that I was just talking about last, like, over the weekend, which is that there's a lot of EVE Online that is functional because it's not that popular. So one of the issues is with CCP fixing something is that if they fix something to make it more popular, they end up sometimes overwhelming it. A really good example of this was like with faction warfare and then later with pirate faction warfare, right? Like, we in faction warfare would love more people to get involved or love it to get fixed and more popular. But then as soon as it does, then more people, like, it overwhelms the system. And a lot more people are going to be just exploiting it for their own value as opposed to actually engaging in the meaningful side of things. Another good example of this would be like the Drifter Crisis sites, right? Like the Drifter Crisis sites were really fun, but they absolutely rely on them not being that popular. So then when they made everybody have to do the Drifter Crisis sites, that created a whole different environment. You literally could not do those Drifter Crisis sites legitimately during that time because they were just so overwhelmed by 30 plus people in a site, because that's what got them what they wanted. So it is worth, like, this is one of those things that always sketches me out when it comes to like CCP or like EVE Online and trying to make it popular, is that there is a lot of EVE Online because of the competitive nature of it that only functions because it isn't that popular. And also it's worth noting that something's popularity is often a balancing factor to how many people are doing it, right? Like exploration, it suddenly becomes really popular because people can do it easier. So the value of doing it collapses. This causes less people to want to do it, and therefore it recorrects back up potentially. So it's interesting. It's something to keep in mind always, that like, because EVE is an open world game, most sites are open world sites, most things are that way, that it doesn't scale up delicately. You know, elegantly, I should say. When newbies in my corps are interested in hunting ghost sites, I always say, do not believe what CCP says the loot is good, and never doubt them when they say the loot is rare. That's awesome. Nanoscale, nanoscale, filter plate. I mean, one could say that the nanoscale filter plate has dropped off significantly, but you can see like year over year, it's still up. Meta molecular combiner. This one is down year over year. Enhanced Ward Console, isn't that one of them? Or that one's fine. See, like, these are fine still. Oh no, that's a different one. This is an exploration loot though, isn't it? One of these things is an exploration loot. Yeah, never mind, yeah. I'm pretty sure this is exploration loot, isn't it? No. It is the enhanced electro neural signaler. That's what it is. So this thing. This exploration, this ghost site loot isn't down. What is the other big thing from ghost sites? Yeah, again, that's down, but it's down from an up position. Covert research. Tools. Yeah, I didn't think that that would be that down because it's so, there's so many different other sources for it already. Pirate faction warfare is way more lucrative than nation state, having pirate effects that spread into high sec. Why doesn't Empire have similar impacts? CCP should tweak it. Well, I mean, that has to do with, like, this goes back to kind of what happened with incursion or invasions, where it's like the difference between fighting for change versus fighting for the standard, for the status quo. That's the metamolecular combiner, and we do see a drop off on that. I don't necessarily agree that pirate faction warfare is necessarily more lucrative, but I do suggest, and the more I deal with faction warfare, the more I feel that engaging in insurgencies as an Empire person should not provide Empire LP. It should provide Upwell LP that gives you access to Mordu stuff, ore stuff, and, you know, that kind of stuff. So suppression bonuses could be buffed potentially as another way of doing it. But I'm just saying, like, I continue to stand by, and I feel like only become further supported that the pro-Empire insurgency side should have an LP store that gives you Edencom or Mordu. Like, if just put Mordu net resonators in there, put you know, maybe or BPCs. You could or it's going to be a little bit more tricky because, like, there's so much focus on ore, getting ore stuff from ore facilities, but, like, I'm sure there's some ore stuff that could be put in there. And the Mordu net resonators is a big one. Because, like, well, 2.25 versus, wait. Now I've got to know, why is Mordu net resonators so cheap? Everything I know would tell me that Mordu's net resonators should be, like, stupid expensive compared to all of the others. But that's just not the practical truth of it. I mean, SOE, like, it's obvious that the Angels and the Garissus ones are going to be cheaper than the rest. But, like, that's so weird. That would be a good change with Empire versus Pirates. Thanks. Yeah. I feel like, you know, Upwell also having as many contacts, Edencom ships, like, the fact that Edencom ships are way too fucking expensive. I don't even, like, that is true. Like, one of the biggest problems with Edencom ships isn't their balance, it's the cost. And that cost comes from the fact that Edencom ships are almost exclusively from DEDLP stores, which is DEDLP is like the only source of good DEDLP right now is the Dread sites in Pochvin? No, in Edencom systems, right? Yeah, in Edencom systems. So pro Edencom people running the anti-Triglavian sites in Triglavian minor victories and Edencom fortresses, right? Because like I've always said that the dreadnoughts are backwards. So the pro Trig dreadnought is in Pochvin and the pro Edencom dreadnought is in Edencom systems. So either way, my point is that providing Edencom site system ships, BPCs, and skill books, providing Upwell, like you could definitely go with like the Upwell like haulers and stuff, the newer ones, plus Mordu stuff. Put that all in an LP store that can only be earned if you are working for the Empire, like in an Empire militia, but doing the insurgency sites as the source of that LP. I think that would be cool. Edencom is a dread. Well, Edencom is the 4 empires. So like the dread site in Pochvin is an Edencom site. And it has one of the 4 empires as dread in it. I'm really confused. Like, this goes against everything I would understand as why Mordu. I wonder, this is so weird that Mordu's net, because Mordu net resonators should, the only source of Mordu net resonators should be Mortis Legion LP. And the only source for Mortis Legion LP is like out in Nullsec doing crazy shit. Yes, no, not a Vorton Dread. That would be probably not great, actually, because it wouldn't like apply very well. If anybody knows why Mordu net resonators are down at the price of Garissus and Angels net resonators instead of the other pirates, I would have expected it at least to be the same as like Blood Raiders, Sancha, etc. This is wild. This, like, the only thing I can think of is that there are some people doing burner missions for Mordu more than anybody else, and they do not value their time because they are selling this for way less than they could, given the bottleneck that it is. Especially, Mordu ships are very popular. This is wild. I don't understand this. Frat does own this space, or for resonators. Yeah, I don't know. This feels way low for net resonators, but like the price history shows that it's been pretty much that. Well, then they're doing a good service, I guess, if they're providing. But like, you don't AFK run Mordu sites like missions. I was there before the introduction of net, and the farmers are crazy. Okay, I would have expected it. I would say that the Mordu net resonators are under the same constraints as, say, Sancha or Serpentis, and yet Sancha and Serpentis are almost 50% more valuable, which is pretty weird. Either way, I still think that Mordu net resonators should be in the LP store for the pro Empire insurgency stuff. The fact that it's weird because people in faction warfare tend to actually, like, they do value LP, they get their value from LP, but like oftentimes if you're active in faction warfare, you've got so much LP, then your major consideration is how to cash it out, not how to earn it. So the idea that like I can do a site that doesn't actually provide me much as far as like the Warzone control goes, but does give me LP, ends up being like such a, like, I don't really care about that. So I just think it should just get its own rewards. The larger NPC areas make them more dangerous, whereas Mordu is just like 3 systems. I think Mordu being 3 systems should make it more dangerous. No, I'm comparing it not just to Garistas. I'm comparing it to Sancha. Oh, you mean they are? But like if we look at Blood Raiders is 375. Sancha is 350 or 3.5. Serpentis is almost, well, it was almost 4, now is over 3.5. I would expect Mordu to be closer to those lines. That's crazy. All right, well, either way, let's keep going. Is there anything else to talk about? Let's look. Hold on. Where is my, god damn it, where is my dog is looking at me like, we're supposed to go out? Blood Raider net is worth almost nothing. Ooh, hold on. That's a good point. That's a good point, which is that those other pirate groups do have other good sources of cashing out your LP. So you're going to cash out your Blood Raider LP with amulets, but you really can only cash out your Mordu LP with Mordu net resonators. That actually, that's probably the best point that somebody has made with this so far. Thank you, Not Henry. Okay. Let's wrap this up. Net trade summary from Wormholes. Kind of interesting to look at, but I'm not that great with it. So let's see. Compared to now, I mean, it looks very much the same. I know there has been like some wars in there, but we see like 7 trillion, 4 trillion. Now 6 trillion, 5 trillion. So, I mean, it's basically 6 of one, half a dozen of the other when it comes to wormhole trade. Although gas, hold on. Gas is overall down, which I think we saw earlier. And then the largest battle in solar system is not a chart that I can really do anything with. So yeah, the Mordu BPCs come from all of LowSec, but that's one of the things that have always kind of like been a problem with this, which is that you can get those Mordu BPCs pretty easily, but you need those net resonators. You can also, yes, you can also get the other pirate BPCs from escalations and such too. Yep. But I think that that's about it for the MER and for today. Like I said, my dog needs to go out. So I'm going to wrap things up for today. Tomorrow, if we don't have any other news, I plan on doing the Galente presidential election overview. So that should be interesting to check out. Make sure you're there. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The liking of the stream is extremely useful. Please, if you haven't liked the stream already, go ahead and like it now. It is a big, big difference about what videos get presented to people on YouTube and what do not. And with the fact that these are live streams instead of like published videos, a lot of people have sometimes have difficulty finding these streams, so they have to be recommended to people, and they get recommended to people if you like them. So make sure to like them so that way people see that this video is relevant to them. Comment, once again, lots of engagement. I've given you guys some questions to ask about monthly economic report and about the RTX and the other lighting and graphics overhauls. I am very interested in your guys' opinions. Maybe I'll start highlighting them more going forward, but those comments are extremely useful for engagement as well. Subscribe to the channel so that way you get these updates as soon as they come out. But I do also strongly recommend you go to our Discord and make sure to give yourself the YouTube tag so that way you can see my posts when I go live on YouTube. I usually post there about an hour beforehand and then right as I'm going live. That's the best way to get the notifications early or like, you know, on time. And of course, consider, if you like what I do, to become a member. Members on YouTube get access to cool emotes that other people don't get. If you do have those emotes, go ahead and show them off now. Otherwise, you also get access to edited videos early and, you know, early stages of edited videos. And you can also support me on my Patreon if you would like. But I don't necessarily have those systems set up as well. If you are a member, make sure to tie your Discord and your YouTube together so that way you can get access to the member-only chat, or the supporter chat in the Discord. And of course, consider joining the Convocation of Empyreans and help us maximize player engagement with EVE Online. Finally, if you don't have the 1,000,000 free skill points, make sure to use the link down below for your 1,000,000 free skill points. That helps you out with getting into the game on all of your accounts, and it helps those who make this channel and the Convocation of Empyreans possible. I think that's about it. So all that said, I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put EVE into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you all very much for checking this out, hanging out with me today, and all of your insightful comments and interesting discussions. Extra thanks to Sheesh for your $10 super chat or whatever it was, gifted donation at the beginning of the stream. You rock. And of course, I want to give my shout out to my Immortal tier supporters: 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Elite, Erladis, Elange, Flash Gordon, May, Malak Starfire, Malin, Mercuton, Mayak, Nihilum, LM1, Sheesh, and Rid. Thank you all so much. I have been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. And until next time, I'll see you in space. I kind of lied. Hold on. No, never mind. Okay. My dog was actually sitting right behind me right there. And so I was going to show her off because she happened to be calm right there. But then she walked away. So I'm sorry. I do post pictures of my dog frequently in the supporters chat and in voice chat. So you can always get them there. Sorry. I tried. All right. Bye.
Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city